Oh my goodness, is that right now?
That's right. Hello, welcome.
Well, have a gay day. Hello, everyone.
Okay, we need applause signs. Applause.
Right.
Thank you.
Darling.
Thank you. I go like that.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
We're here. We're queer. Okay, so actually what we're going to do is we're going to start over here. So you might want to think about this. I'm going to say it slowly. So I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. What you're going to say is your name, your pronouns, your primary role today, and 2 intersecting identities. One of those will be LGBT related and something else. And if you get lost, I'll need to say it again.
Thank you, Quazar. Hi, I'm Reilly Skinner. My pronouns are they, them. Help me out.
Primary role today?
Primary role today, I'm a board member, community organizer. I'm on the committee. So I was kind of just doing damage control throughout the day, and nothing really went wrong, to my knowledge. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. 2 intersecting identities, disabled and non-binary transgender.
Oh, okay.
My name's JT Mason. She, her, hers. Okay. And I was one of the speakers today, and talked a little bit about the history of Monterey activism. There's John. Some intersection. I'm a lesbian. I'm also a mother and a woman. And they kind of intersect. Yeah.
Good.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Henry. I use she, her pronouns. I am one of the co-chairs for our board of directors for Monterey Peninsula Pride, and was also the festival coordinator today in terms of some of the inside tabling stuff that happened at our awesome event. And some identities that are really important to me is that I identify as a high femme cis queer lesbian.
Oh, that. So I'm Stephen the Magnificent, and my spiritual name is Quazar, and I do they, them, their pronouns, but I prefer your highness. And let's see what else. And my 2 intersecting identities, I am an African American radical fairy.
I love it. I love it. My name is Tyler Williamson, and I use he, him, his pronouns. I kind of I'm also a co-chair on the board, and I've been kind of leading the meetings. And the great thing about the events that happened today was I could really step back and just have all of the amazing organizers do their job, and without me having to interfere with everything. It was a beautiful experience. It was really nice, actually. And I walked in today not actually having any fears or worries that anything was going to go wrong, because everybody did such an amazing job, and I knew that it was going to happen that way. So, and
Intersecting identities?
yeah, I am a black male. Yeah, I think that's
A black male, yeah.
My name is River Navai. My pronouns are they, them, and my primary role today was that I gave a speech. I was asked to speak.
It was amazing.
And thank you. I was very stressed about, not the speech giving part, because I'm quite comfortable in front of people, but just about what I could offer as one more white queer, you know, to a movement that's typically dominated by people who look like me. My intersecting identities, besides being white and queer, I live with mental illness, and I am trans, so I like to say I'm a bisexual, non-binary, bipolar person.
Hi, I'm Jon Perez. Male pronouns he, his, and him. I don't have no idea what I'm saying today. I was the senior Grand Marshal. I've been so reminded today. Got to practice my wave as I went past windows on the bay there to support the protest. And led the invocation with fellow clergy. And my intersection probably sounds like a bad bar joke. A blind gay priest, you know, walks into a bar, and you know, I've yet to figure out the rest of the punchline, but I know there's one there somewhere. So,
I am here just to represent Wave Street Live, where this panel is broadcasting right now. We are a community hub that loves to offer places for our community to come together and just express themselves and have their voices amplified. And so we hope to continue to do this. It's our second year having the Pride panel here, and it's just the greatest joy. And so I am my Intersecting Identities. I'm a pansexual, just a neuroatypical cis woman. And as far as the other bullet points I was supposed to hit, they've completely blown out of my mind. But the Wave Street Live is happy to have everyone here, and I'm going to leave this beautiful panel to discuss everything. And thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you audience for joining us. I'm going to adjust this further here.
So before we get into things too far, I want to say just a little bit about Wave Street Studios itself. I first found out, I don't know how long it's been here, I guess for quite some time, but I first found out about them when I was one of the organizers for the Women's March. And they were fantastic. That's when we did our first panel here. Then we did Black Lives Matter panels here. And what I want to say is that they really have a vision of Wave Street Studios being at the heart of activism going on here. And think about it, this can be broadcast all over the world, right? So for those of you who are in social justice organizations, first of all, I want everyone to, after this, actually go look at the video that we're filming, because it helps them the more views that they get. And so I would really ask for everyone who is in these types of organizations to be supporting Wave Street Studios, because I think that they can really be at the heart of activism here and really amplifying our message and what is more important for LGBT people than visibility. So this is a marriage made in heaven. Yeah. A few things I want to get to, and then we'll just kind of open up the panel. I want to mention that our primary sponsor today was Community Human Services, and that in addition to the services that they offer to the general community, they do have LGBTQ staff, and they offer counseling for LGBTQ individuals, and they have some group counseling that's available for LGBT teens from 12 to 17 through their Rainbows Over Seaside and Rainbows Over Salinas. So, yay for them! So the purpose of Monterey Peninsula Pride is to unite and serve local LGBTQ+ communities by celebrating our histories, pursuing multicultural equity, developing LGBTQ leadership, and educating ourselves and others, and cultivating alliances. So we just had this fantastic parade. And so what I'm going to do, so I'm a radical fairy, and radical fairies take after, they kind of follow the model of Native American Two-Spirit. It's not Two-Spirit because we don't want to be appropriating, but we do something that we call a heart circle. And so I have a rainbow condom, so we're doing safe sex at the same time. And I'm going to pass it over to Reilly. Oh gosh, it's and we're going to go through, and you get to speak whatever's on your heart to begin. Whatever, this is completely open. Completely open.
Feeling pressure?
Thank you, Quazar.
And you can pass and we can come back.
Well, can I just say that, like, I'm feeling so grateful for our community today. Like, the event was so successful and so incredible and so, I don't know, just a loving space, diverse, intersectional, accessible. Like, I live for that kind of thing. I am going to pass because,
I'm sure we'll
here's
be
the
back.
condom. Yeah.
Probably like a lot of you, as I watch the news, I get pretty horrified and scared. I think for marginalized people, what's happening right now is very scary. It feels like times we've seen before that our country used to fight against, and now we're going up against that. And it's very easy at that time for me to then kind of dig a little hole and get immobilized and pull in. And it's exactly the opposite of what we have to do. We have to get out there and make the coalitions across every barrier that has been thrown at us, from race to class to gender to sexual orientation. And so when we come out and we can celebrate like this, it's wonderful because we can feel that energy from each other, but we also have to use it to build those coalitions, get each other's emails, figure out ways where we can get together and keep lifting each other up so we can fight the horrors that we see and turn this thing around. Because I really believe we're stronger and we're better, and I need to feed off all of you and the energy that we do so I can go back tomorrow morning, get up, not turn on the typical news, but turn on what's going to make this world the way I want it to be. And so I'm very glad to be in the room, in a parade and everything with people who live their hearts through love and are courageous. So thank you all for being here. And I won't be using that, so you can pass that down.
I mean, I'm not going to use it either.
But it was kind of fun to have her a little bit.
Gay jokes are fun.
I think my heart is just feeling full of a lot of gratitude today. There are so many folks who made today what it has been so far and what it will be, because we're not done. There's an after party tonight. And everyone from the volunteers who showed up at 8 a.m. this morning to put the festival space together, to our major sponsor, to our other sponsors, and all of the community organizers who have been meeting and putting so many hours into this and overcoming scary obstacles and challenging obstacles and controversial obstacles we've pushed through as a community and as a team. And I just truly, truly value what each member of our organizing committee has been bringing to the table consistently. And just as Tyler said it so beautifully earlier, I wasn't worried about today either, because I knew everyone was bringing their strength into what we were doing, and I feel like it showed. And I think we're going to continue to move forward as an excited, energized, critical, engaged, empowered community. So,
Good job.
Oh God, I am not feeling brilliant at all today. I'm so tired. But I want to say, so one of the reasons why we're doing this, I've been doing, well, a few things. I've been doing activism in this area, it's the only area I've done it, for about 10 years now. And my experience with this new nonprofit, Monterey Peninsula Pride, and the year before, this, I have to tell you, and I love all the other places that I've been, but this has been the most excellent, efficient, I've just never seen activism on this level that is both so purposeful, so intersectional, and so completely heart-centered. And so sometimes when you do activism, you get crushed. And what I can tell you is that this activism that we're doing enlivens me, and I leave feeling filled up instead of depleted. And so that's a testament to the quality of people that we have doing this work.
There's so many different emotions. Just trying to process it all today, and I mean, reflecting from the beginning of the experience, and then just kind of everything that's been happening this year. And you know, one thing that I've been trying to focus a lot on in my life is focusing more on myself. I think one thing that mainstream media tends to get us to do is to look at other people and be very judgmental, or try to think that we know what's best for them. So anyways, I've been trying to find a space in my life to focus on me and the effect that I have on the relationships that I have. And I think one thing that I've learned through the experience and working with the folks in Pride is that it's a space that I can go to and feel completely okay to be vulnerable. And I think that's such an important and beautiful thing. And so I think another big thing about me is that I'm very bubbly, and I like to have fun, and I think that's what attracts me to other people. And so it's important for us to be able to support each other and try to find these and build these coalitions, because if we're not doing it together, it makes it more difficult when we're separated, and then we're, you know, by ourselves, and we go into these vulnerabilities and these fears, and we allow these to take control. And it's just so powerful, because the work that we all did today was beautiful, and how it translated over to the community. I don't know, it was just very beautiful, and I love to continue to see how this goes, and just I don't know, so many emotions, so many emotions.
Checking in with my heart. I am really grateful to have just seen our community really come out and be so loud and so loving this year and last. And last year, to also having been asked to speak last year, just to have that kind of platform. I mean, it just would not be happening for me personally if it weren't here in this community that I belong to and was raised in and work in. I was really touched by the things that were said in the speeches by the other generations. You know, our theme this year was Generations Through Pride, or Generations of Pride, and JT, you talking about like your personal experiences being at the clubs here and not feeling safe to leave by yourself, and you know, walking out of the club and your car's tires being slashed and all that. You know, I don't have to deal with that because you dealt with that, and so that just means a lot to me. And in my research for my speech, I was reading a lot about Stonewall, and you know, that's kind of tends to be a little more conceptual or hypothetical almost, because I've never been to Stonewall, I've never been on Christopher Street in New York, and like, you're someone that I know, and here in this town that I can identify like where that is, that was happening, and so it just feels real. There's so much that just feels more and more real. You know, also like the HIV and AIDS crisis having mostly blown over, but this year is the first time that somebody that I like know and care about and love was able to tell me that they were HIV positive, and so that feels like a more real thing, and it just makes me appreciate the work that we have done, the places we have come from, and also realize where we are now and the work that still is in our future. And then also seeing my student, Janae, was our youth speaker, and I'm only like 10 years older than her, but I just feel like, Mama Bear, kind of, Mama Papa, Parent Bear, and
non-binary bear.
Yeah. Just really happy that she felt safe and comfortable to get up there and talk about her experiences. So yes, heart grateful and loved and supported.
Thank you. As the senior representative, I guess, I understand there's a lot of experience, but I got the title of senior today, so I might as well just, you know, milk it for yeah.
You get a discount.
That's what we're going to go to Denny's later and take it full advantage.
You set your goals.
Yes. You know, I've been very impressed by the opportunities in the event today. And, you know, reflecting the fact that as a peninsula sometimes, or a county, everybody sort of, you know, goes up to San Francisco, go to San Jose, go to Santa Cruz, and we sort of keep having to prove ourselves. And, you know, as I mentioned today, from that very first walk on Lighthouse in New Monterey, and the reiterations of keeping to try and keep moving forward and not getting discouraged, and taking our breath every now and then for, you know, some to rethink and think how we can move forward in the celebration of our community. And to see this current step forward is really quite brilliant, and of how you guys have come together and moved it along. So I'm very proud of that. And we are at this really difficult time because we're in the way of LGBT rights, and where we've come from over the last couple of decades. In some ways, our foundation, our cement of our foundation, is not quite dry yet. You know, it's there, and there's great opportunity, and so we have to make sure that no one comes along and tries to take our building permit away from us, so to speak, and destroy our foundation, which makes me awfully nervous these days. And the fact that you're able to bring and help build the community and celebrate it here is helpful, because this is a very different and difficult LGBTQ community. There's a lot of subgroups. You know, we are vast, from LGBTQ farm workers in Salinas to LGBTQ military here, and there's not many platforms for all those to come together and intersect. And so you are providing that, and I'm delighted. You know, good work. And remember that you know, there's still a lot more to do, and you know, we've got to make sure that foundation has a chance to really solidify and dry and build upon it. So thank you for sharing your condoms.
Sharing condoms.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Please don't do that at home.
Or ever.
So I want to,
At home, in the car.
But I just want to say that condoms, if you're going to do safe sex, condoms can be cut and used as dental dams.
Well, thank you.
So,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
we can figure that out.
We're like you.
and that's coming from the priest at the end. Okay, I just want to point that out.
Thank you.
And please don't reuse them.
Don't read.
So I want to acknowledge. I want to acknowledge a couple of people. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we are right now on the traditional territories of the Ohlone, Costanoan, Esselen Nation. So just a moment of gratitude for them. Yeah, you know, there's, speaking of intersectionality, there's such an intersectionality in terms of colonialism and certainly the LGBT community, because along with that colonialism really came all these original nations, many of whom incorporated LGBT people into their lives, and they were forcefully all, you know, sexuality and gender difference. Well, you know the drill. It was all forced out. Other person I want to acknowledge is the brainchild of the first Pride last year was from Kayla Jones, who is a sitting councilwoman. How old is she?
24.
24.
She was able to
on
just stand up
Seaside.
when you said the 25 and under group.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
So this is her brainchild. But because she is on the council and figured that we would do it in Seaside and she would have to recuse herself, she was not involved in the organizing, and so she talked to Tyler, and Tyler is the one who got this all together from the start all by himself, and then getting everyone involved. So Tyler has been our fearless leader for all of this time, and he's been fantastic. And so, but Tyler, the board has, well, what are you? You're the co-chair. I'm sitting between two co-chairs. Will you tell us why the organizing committee decided that we needed a nonprofit? Why not just continue as we had with the planning committee?
Sure. So last year, I basically had to create a bank account and get a sole proprietorship in order to have Monterey Peninsula Pride be able to be something that you can write on your check so that we can receive money. We weren't an organization yet. We were just a group of people in the community getting together. And so it was important that we created that path, because it was just very difficult and time consuming just getting it up and running. And it just made sense, if we wanted to continue this long range, that we needed to develop some kind of organization, whether it be profit or for-profit or nonprofit. And obviously we went with the nonprofit route. And so that's kind of been the main consumption of our time. Actually, over this last year, we didn't get our nonprofit status until, was it March? So
24th?
A lot of what we did this year was basically a repeat of what we did last year, because it was just easier to kind of use the model and flip it again, given the limited time that we had to get ready for this. So that was the main driver. And through that, I guess if I could say, have come amazing, wonderful ideas. We had a couple of sessions with
Deb Burke.
Deb Burke from CSUMB, who, it was kind of, I don't know what we called them, like visioning sessions. And so that's where we developed our mission statement. We developed a vision statement for what we see, where we see ourselves going in the short and long term. And it was just very energizing to go through that experience. But again, that took up a lot of time. And so I'm really looking forward to digging deeper into that and finding our path forward beyond just celebrating Pride once a year. So.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
So aren't you with some other Pride somewhere?
Some other Pride. I do this, just on my free time. Yes, I'm the festival coordinator for Santa Cruz Pride as well.
The Santa Cruz Pride. Okay. So she came to, Rachel started coming to our meetings, and I thought she was the most impressive person. I was like, my goodness. So we immediately made her co-chair, even though she wasn't here last year. We're like, her! So it sounds like you have a little bit of experience.
A little bit.
So tell us about Santa Cruz Pride, and how is this the same? How is this different? How is it coming from there to here?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Oh my gosh, what a fun question. So obviously this month has just been full of joy and stress and not a lot of sleep because it's Pride Month. So we had Santa Cruz Pride on June 3rd and Monterey Peninsula Pride today. And it's been incredibly fun working for both different organizations because there are so many ways in which we're different and so many in which we're similar. I think one of the biggest things that really jumps out at me, Santa Cruz Pride, if folks are familiar with the community, has been around for a very long time, for decades. And while it got taken over by volunteers in the last 4 years who have been putting it on for that duration of time, it's really become a well-oiled machine. So when I joined Santa Cruz Pride, I was essentially handed a binder. We're going to be creating a binder after this year. They're like, here's what you do as festival coordinator. I was like, cool. And I just executed, and it went brilliantly. And so it's been fun to take a lot of the tools that I've learned from some veterans of Pride planning who really know what they're doing, and bring them to this group, which none of us otherwise have put on a Pride before, right? It's unique in terms of its activism, and so it's been helpful to kind of bridge those different pieces of my work. I think some ways in which they're different is that Santa Cruz Pride is just a group of volunteers. They're supported by the Diversity Center, which is a nonprofit, but the Pride planning entity is not a nonprofit. They're two different things, and so we're just a group of organizers out there. And so I'm also getting to be a part of something really beautiful, which is the cement is totally not dry. We're building the foundation of what is this nonprofit here in the Monterey Peninsula area, which is super exciting. And we have blueprints and ideas from those who came before us, but we get to create it to what fits this community and who's here to enjoy it, benefit from it, celebrate with us. So it's been really beautiful to be a part of those two different worlds that are just across the bay, and also help bridge that connection a little bit deeper.
I think the best thing about doing this work is the people that you bring into it, and the people that you meet that have been doing this work forever that you finally get to meet. I want to mention, so someone I met, I'm going to think 2 years ago, JT, when we had what was the church? Charlotte, where the church was?
Yes.
What's it called?
The AME church, when the person walked in and killed everyone.
Right. So we had a vigil in Seaside for that,
Yes.
Which was very well attended, and that's when I first met you. And then, and I'm going to say something that broke my heart the following year. So I was very involved with the NAACP at the time, and helped to coordinate people getting there. And the next year, we had the Pulse nightclub slaying, and there were people from one community that I did not see go out and support that community, and so it was very hard, and it was very hurtful. And I sometimes think about that, and it's so interesting the way that race plays into LGBTQ stuff, and I'm just gonna, give you my take on it. My take on it is, for minorities, I tend to find that minorities are often they're often in a place where they're trying to put forward their best, right? And so I feel like there's shame with our LGBT folks in minority communities sometimes, and that's really sad. But I think it is part of the oppression of the racism in the first place. I know that you do a lot of work with Whites for Racial Equity, and I guess you've been doing activism for some time. So how was it coming out as a lesbian when you did, and what brought you into activism?
Can I go back to one thing you said just a teensy bit earlier? Because I would like to challenge the LGBT community also to be a lot more aware of racism. You know, we have to build those coalitions. When Prop 8 happened, one of the most heartbreaking things about Prop 8 is it was the same election where Obama won. And so those of us who are gay, lesbian, or allies woke up the morning having worked for Obama and have him win and have this wonderful wave was also the same morning we woke up to Prop 8 passing, which was a terrifically horrible proposition that went against all same-sex marriage. And so it was kind of like, well, wait a minute. So what happened? You know, I'll do the creepy LGBT side, because what happened was, oh yeah, we get more black people voting, but they didn't vote for us. You know, where was their vote? And it was that knee-jerk crap that we do when we try. We're worse off
and it's
than
deliberate.
someone else. Yes, we do get played against each other. And what it was, and I think you're so brilliant at this, Quazar, is we needed to build coalition. You can't just expect me to be there for you if you're not there for me. We need to really work to dig out the misinformation we've had about each other and build those coalitions in good times as well as bad times. So I think we have a lot to learn from each community.
And can I say,
Please.
And it happened, and I don't know, was it 2015 or 2013, but the exact reverse happened.
Yes.
So as a black person, as a black gay person in 2008, right? So part of me is like, yay, Obama, same-sex marriage. And then forward a few years, and we get the Supreme Court that on one day, we've got same-sex marriage across the land. And either a few days later or a few days before, the jewel of African American organizing, the Voting Rights Act, was gutted. And there again, except it was the opposite. Yeah. It's like the LGBT community again. It's like, yay! And the African American community is, ooh. And a part of that intersectionality is because I wrote something back then telling the LGBTQ community, like always trying to pull them in, is like, you must be paying attention to voting rights, because what you're seeing in this country right now happening to African Americans, and it happened back in the 1890s, right? Where we have moved the ball forward, and everything that we got, because it was for black men, it was 150 years ago that we got the vote, right? And so everything that we moved forward, we lost it all. And we're in another place right here, right now, where we're in the process of losing it all. And that's why we have to be so coalitional. So
So we're doing work. A quick answer. I was raised Unitarian Universalist. And I think part of your DNA when you're raised that way is social action. We have 7 principles. The first one is the belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all, period. And if you really believe that, which I do, and I work hard at our church and work with the youth, you kind of get it. And then the more different you are than the norm, the more you sort of see how they're lying about you, where the cracks are, and then you sort of, well, they're lying about me. What are they saying? And you start seeing it. And so to put my faith into action is to be as a community organizer. And then I chose my way through media, because I think building coalitions means we need to reach out to each other and find out who we are and what we're doing. And so the work I did in radio and now through National Coalition Building Institute and Whites for Racial Equity and Pride is building that community.
Stephen, can I tag on to this a bit? because Ana Caballero and I have done some work with the help of Deborah Burke.
Yeah.
We're sitting down with the Hispanic community and some of the LGBT community, and between here and Santa Cruz, and having some conversations for this exact issue of how we can support each other, learn to trust each other. And what we found is that we had to sort of dim the lights a bit, so to make everybody comfortable that there wasn't going to be a press conference or a news media, just so that they can sit in a room and get to know each other, and find who were the ones who were willing to listen. And everybody had to sort of check their political agenda. You know, that's tough when you're working with politicians, you know, out the door. And I think it's been an impressive conversations that we've had. We're overdue for another one, but the idea that we, the LGBT community and the Hispanic politicians, were able to look at Pulse as something that affected both of them, and that there was some common issues and concerns that they were able to recognize, and places that if they want to go forward, they know they can go forward and work together on. And I think more of that needs to happen. You're right, we have to have more of these dialogues and create the environment that it's safe for them to have. Because what I find is that, especially with politicians, and if there's any here, no offense, but if there is going to be a camera at some point, they'll find it and it'll change the conversation. And we got to establish the foundation first.
Go beyond the soundbite.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they're always worried about how it's going to sound or be misunderstood. And again, kudos to Deborah Burke for being such a great facilitator for us in those conversations.
I hear a lot about media. Reilly, so Reilly is the youngest member of our board. He's also with the National Coalition Building Institute. That's where I met them. And you wrote an article. And can you tell us about what you wanted to do? I'm not sure if it was picked up, so can you tell us
It
what?
wasn't.
It wasn't?
They wanted
It
10
was
days.
beautifully done.
Well, they wanted it 10 days in advance, and I submitted it like 5 days in advance, but they were like, send it in anyway, so I did, and it didn't get in. But yeah, it's very in line with what River was saying about honoring the past generation and how they've paved the way for us to have the privileges that we have now, to feel safe, at least more safe than it was back then, and just honoring that, honoring our history, like understanding that we have to know our history in order to move forward. And there's a little tidbit at the end about, like, I kind of paraphrased Harvey Milk, encouraging people to come out whatever their identity is if they feel safe and comfortable. And the reason why I say paraphrase Harvey Milk is because the terminology's changed. Harvey Milk was very gay and lesbian, and now we have all this extra, all these the
More
new
has been
terminology
revealed.
for new identities. Yeah, regarding gender and sexuality, and just all these beautiful, unique ways that people express themselves. So I wanted to call out to them and invite them into.
Is there
our
anything
world.
that you deal with as a younger person? We always want to kind of be as aware as we can of intergenerational reciprocity. But sometimes the older generation, like, we think that you remember what we were doing, right? And sometimes things are happening with the newer generation that we're not aware of yet. So are there any roadblocks that you see, or any special stuff that, any special insights that you think that us and older generations aren't quite getting yet, and you're going to lead us the way forward?
I don't personally experience very much, but I'm pretty well spoken in a conversation, and I'm pretty well read. I want to say, like, I think to my understanding, what happens so often is teenagers will speak and then they get invalidated because they're younger, and as soon as they hit 18 or 21, like once they pass those thresholds, then they're seen as an adult with a mind and a voice.
If that.
But
I'm sorry. It could be later than 18, 21.
Right. I mean, I'm lucky. I don't know. I also, like, I have the privilege of, when I have my beard, I'm perceived as a man, so that grants me a certain degree of privilege. And I don't really experience personally very much invalidation in that realm. I'm also on, like, I work with you and JT all the time, and like in the activist community, I feel like I'm very validated and heard. Personally speaking.
I did. I want to add to that really strongly. Partially why I think our theme means so much this year is Reilly and I are actually very close in age. I think I'm only a year older. And one of the things, and I work with college students, and one of the fears that I have, because one of the challenges that I see happening is that we don't have this bridging of generations, and queer youth are losing their history because of it. And if they don't know how to find that information, they don't know how to create those connections, or there's barriers to accessing that, we don't have our oral histories being shared as they used to. We don't organize in physical space. I say we as if I used to do this, I didn't, but queer folks in general don't organize in physical space in the same way that they used to. We didn't have online platforms to connect. Like, you had to go out and find the gay bar or, you know, the gay place that was like low key, and you were making these connections and sharing stories, and we lose a little bit of that. And there's also a lot of other new powerful pathways to connection because of the changing times. But that is something that I see is so, the younger and younger my students get, I feel like the less and less they know about queer history. And so this theme this year, I think, means so much to me because of that, because understanding queer history is something I'm always empowering my LGBTQ youth that I work with to explore and research and understand and pursue.
Well, and if I could add to that, and I think that's kind of why I was speaking a little bit to vulnerabilities earlier, because if you're able to show people that maybe perhaps look up to you, kind of maybe you're in an older generation and you're vulnerable, if your goal is to leave the world in a better place, right, what better way than to show those vulnerabilities and allow the younger generations to see your mistakes, and so that they know how to have a stronger foundation to grow onto. So I see that as I'm transitioning into some older generations here and seeing younger ones come up and looking up to me in a lot of ways.
And I think I'm, you know, one of part in our mission statement is honoring the histories. So I think that is one of the things that I'm hoping that we get to do as a nonprofit. And you know, Dave Reichert has already gotten us so far forward on, you know, on rediscovering and rebroadcasting our histories. And so hopefully that there are people that are paying attention to the history that we're making right now. River.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing
So
good.
you know what? So you are the theater teacher at Seaside High School. I was a president of the drama club at Seaside High School in 1979.
Wow! Oh my goodness!
And we had a gay teacher, the gay teacher of the drama department, but we didn't know it because he was in the closet. So it wasn't until I graduated years later that found that out. So it seems like that might be a question, but I'm not going to ask that question. I'm going to ask a totally different question. So I'm gonna ask about well, so at the Pride, so you ended our speeches, and I thought it was just such a powerful ending, and you spoke so much about intersectionality and oppression, and so I'm going to give you a choice of speaking anything that you want to speak about intersectionality, as you did earlier, or anything that you I think that you might be the most non-binary. I'm a little bit non-binary on the panel right now. So intersectionality, non-binariness.
Okay.
Make a souffle.
You know, I made a frittata this morning, but I threw together all these leftover things, and so let me try to take a little piece here and there and come up with something that might be palatable. So first off, I don't like the term like most non-binary, because I don't think there's a more or less. I think there's as many different gender identities as there are human beings. But you know, no matter how somebody presents, no matter how long somebody has claimed an identity, if you are transgender or if you are whatever gender you feel, as soon as you say that, that's what you are. Even if you haven't had the courage to say it to anybody on the outside yet, there is no trans enough. There is no marker that you reach, and that has been something somewhat within our community. And I had a trans woman friend who used to be like, I hate non-binary AFAB people because, you know, they claim this trans struggle when they don't really deal with it. And, you know, that hurt a lot because she's a friend of mine and because I'm non-binary and AFAB, which means assigned female at birth. But at the same time, I get where she's coming from because she has to like walk out the front door and people are like, what are you wearing, bro? And like really, really hurtful stuff that I don't have to deal with as much because masculinity is acceptable on all bodies in a patriarchal culture at this point, you know. And so where am I going with that? I guess my non-binary experience is as valid as anybody else's on this panel or elsewhere. What I spoke about today, for those of you who maybe weren't there, I just talked about the history of Pride being started primarily led by trans women of color, and this movement through the decades has come to center mainly the white male cisgender gay experience, and it's really not fair. And something that has been coming up in all of our conversations, you know, we've been talking about the Black community and the LGBTQ community, you know, kind of having this tug of war almost in the elections, not because anybody necessarily rigged it that way, although, you know, elections can be rigged. But, you know, because it's kind of, we're pitted against each other, or about the Latinx community and the LGBTQ community both facing a lot of heartbreak from the Pulse shooting. But I think it's not that we have struggles in common, although that is true. I think it's that there are people who deal with both struggles everywhere across the board. There are almost every person who, I was looking at the photos that we printed in the program of the people who died at Pulse that night in 2016, and you know, they're almost all LGBTQ and they're almost all Latinx, and so it's not just that both communities have a stake; it's that those specific people and the people who share those intersecting identities who you know, are in our community here, they deal with oppression on both fronts. And if the Latinx community is like, well, here's the needs we have as Latinx people that, you know, we don't have, okay, here, you know, here's the needs that are really specific to Latinx people. And then if the LGBTQ community is like, here's the needs that are really specific to LGBTQ people, it ends up really, the people fall through the cracks who share both. Because if we think of something as being a gay issue, it tends to be something that a gay person who, like, that's their primary form of oppression, you know, for example, a white cis gay man, you know, he doesn't deal with misogyny and sexism, he doesn't deal with transphobia, he doesn't deal with racism, and so he might say these are the gay issues, but you can't separate lived experience. And so especially since so much of our history is founded on the work of, like, Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson. She's a Black trans woman, and she didn't get to, you know, pick and choose which identity to wear when she did her work. And I think what I would have liked to explore more in my speech, but I wasn't able to, just because of time, is that the Pride movement and the Stonewall riots that incited our real movement of, like, let's come out as a public act, it wasn't just like, let's have a party every year. Let's have a party every year. It involved so much work in terms of social organizing and political campaigning. And I mean, you all know, because we do that work, but I think that is what I'm seeing is our job as Monterey Peninsula Pride is not just to put on a party every year. Now that we have that nonprofit standing, because that's what I know you spent the past year really securing, what can we do, you know, between now and December that's not planning another Pride Parade, but that is advocating on behalf of all oppressed communities and all the people who fall under the LGBTQ umbrella, but who have struggles that maybe aren't always as visible, whether it's disability or class or any of the things we've already kind of spoken about. So I'm really happy that we're not just organizers of a parade, but that we are a nonprofit group committed to social justice and activism.
I'm going to ask one last question, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So when we're talking about intersectionality, some of these intersectionalities sit with each other more comfortably than others. And some of us have intersectionalities that are very difficult to hold together. So our board decided not to have the police march in our parade in uniform. And we had some police officers who are LGBT and who were hurt by that decision. Another area in which, like for me personally, was very difficult. The hardest thing for me being an LGBT person was my Christianity. It's now omni-faith, but my Christianity and how that sat in the African American community. So that can be very difficult, and that I find, again, very much with whites as well, but very much with some ethnicities, that can be very difficult. Father Jon is a gay Episcopal priest, and I just imagine that must be because I have had a Bible in the Castro, and I have been ostracized, and I have been and I've been ostracized as a gay person in some churches. And here you are, a gay priest. So how do you reconcile and hold this together? And what's your journey like?
Well, you know, when I went through the process, it was the time when I could still get kicked out for being gay. It wasn't the Episcopal Church finally reconciled the ordination of gays and lesbians right before or right after. So I just made it fine. However, you know, it was a very difficult time because the church was in debate, and you know,
Which church?
The Episcopal Church was in debate on it, and I had made a choice. You know, I think when you're an activist, you have to look at how you're going to make your change. Do we try to make change from outside the institution, or do we try to make change from inside the institution? And which is going to be more effective to what you're trying to achieve. And I decided I was going to try to affect change by being inside the institution, doing it that way. And you know, it was pretty darn scary. I received one death threat that was, they were very nice in their death threat, that just in case I was not, just in case as a blind priest I could not read their handwriting well, they included pictures. So that was a nice way of communicating. And that's what I call the police, right? That's when Don Fusilier appeared. But you know, the way I've navigated this is, I'm at peace and not defensive of the lens I use to see the Holy Scriptures that my church uses. And I try to be respectful to other people, saying, you know, that's the lens you use. The lens I use, I'm going to talk churchy here, is how Jesus Christ led. And Jesus doesn't say anything about homosexuality. he has a lot to say about Sodom and Gomorrah and hospitality and the lack of hospitality. And that's the great sin of Sodom and Gomorrah, not welcoming the stranger. And that's the lens of the lens of which I see through and interpret through. And that is where my peace is. And that's what I communicate. If somebody can't handle that or reject that, I am sorry. I have learned that Bible scripture at 10 paces doesn't work. You give me a verse, I give you a verse, you give me a verse, I give you a verse, and who's ever left standing, by the beaten scripture, it doesn't work because they're set in their ways. And the only thing that I can do is demonstrate my faith and show that the path that I'm walking. And I find that to be the most effective tool on it. I think it's hard as a head of a church, in case the bishop's listening, I want to be very careful in that term, to be the priest of a church, that people will not come to that church because the priest is gay, and they're missing out on the priests. We come and go. we're temporary. It's the congregation, and that they're missing out on a great experience and great people inside that environment because they're making a judgment about me, and I'm the wrong person to be making the judgment about on that. And so I like to see the LGBT community reconnect with the institutional churches. There's this real difficult challenge, as I did today, where people are being hurt by the institution and try to reconcile with the institution, because the churches that are coming around, the churches that are embracing the LGBT community, whether it's Unitarian or the ELC Lutherans or the Episcopal Church, have suffered greatly for their stances. And I go to the national office at the ELCA headquarters in Chicago, a place that once employed 600 people, and there's only 200 people left. And because they were hoping that when they did the right thing and made the right decision, that the LGBT community would respond back, and it didn't happen. And so we've just got a tremendous amount of work on both sides. It goes back to the other things that we're talking about, is building those bridges between the causes on it. Hopefully I've answered the question. Before
It was good. A lot in there.
So we're going to open it up to the audience now, and you can do comments, you can do questions, do whatever you like. We've got, how long do we have? We have, we got 15 minutes. So, or we can just go on while you think it through. Yes, lady right there. Sue, Paris, into the eye.
All of you have done and are doing so much good work. What would you ask of allies? So the question is, what would we ask of allies?
I would say be patient. We've got so much on our plate and so much to do that sometimes it's easy for us to be conceived as flaky or conceive each other as flaky, because we're all pedaling the tricycle as fast as we can. And to help us and let us go through what we need to do at the pace that we need to do it to be the most effective. Does that help? Yeah.
I have two. I have what I always say to allies, which is join the community. That's the opposite of where you have privilege. So if you're heterosexual, and by joining the community, I mean be a volunteer, be a worker, be a donor to that community. So that's the first thing that I would say, and take direction from the members of that community. The other thing I would say is I'm going to speak specifically to non-gay or bisexual men who consider themselves our allies. My request, and it may be a hard one, it would be very useful. I think it would be very useful if straight men would start holding hands in public. Because it is so, gay, the reason why I moved to San Francisco wasn't so I could have sex. I could have plenty of that here and did when I was much, much younger. I moved to San Francisco so I could hold hands with a partner in public, and that meant more to me. I would tell you, when particularly in my 20s, that meant more to me than anything same-sex marriage. There's no issue that meant more to me, honestly, in my everyday life than just being able to do the taken for granted niceties and affection that heterosexuals do everywhere, all the time, all day long, in every movie I ever have to see. And I don't think there's enough of us, honestly. I mean, we are a numerical minority to change the culture, to make that okay. And there are men all over the world who hold hands, but it doesn't happen in this particular society. And that would honestly change the quality of our lives. I think it would change the quality of our lives and give much more permission. And you would actually be taking on some of the homophobia and all of that stuff, and really understanding what we go through. So if you really want to put your money where your mouth is, straight men hold hands in public. I dare you.
I would say I'm going to quote Rachel on this, based on a conversation we had yesterday. Question everything. Right, so if you're cisgender, question gender roles. If you are a straight person, question sexuality, because queer culture is born out of questioning these things and combating toxic things that literally hurt people. There's a death toll. So if you can question these things and kind of internalize what the queer community is trying to communicate with, I don't know, the greater community around them, I think that would be really beneficial to everyone.
I think to just add a little tidbit to what Reilly just said, would be to understand that being an ally to gay and lesbian people does not equate to being an ally to bisexual or other sexualities that are not as often represented, and it's not equitable at all to being an ally to trans folks. And so those are two distinct and separate things, gender and sexuality, and if that's a new idea, start asking questions and ask one of us or other people that you know, or do some reading about go online. Great new resource, right, of this generation. And so just begin to understand that sexuality and gender are two very different things, and showing up as an ally for various folks under this great big spectrum of acronyms and queer means a lot of really different things. And as a country, I feel like in many ways we are moving to this direction of being a great ally to homonormative gay and lesbian people, but we're really doing a pretty sad job in a lot of capacities of showing up for trans folks in our community.
We have another question?
Can I actually respond? Thank you for the question about being an ally. And in a way, it's like we are all allies to the people. Hopefully, we should all be allies to the people who, where we have the privilege and they lack that exact privilege. That's so important to me. But a couple really specific things. So I use gender neutral pronouns, and I also have to make a conscious effort to just use gender neutral language, for example, when addressing strangers. That's a really good practice for your brain, especially so many people all the time, I just can't wrap my head around the grammar. I'm like, yeah, it takes some time to wrap your head around it, but if you're just saying you can't, then you're not going to be able to. You have to really, it's a shift in the way that you think. And you never can really tell what a person's gender is from the outside. That's why one thing you can do is introduce your pronouns and normalize that for people whose pronouns maybe are different than a person they're meeting would expect. So that if Tyler is like, hey, what's up? My name's Tyler, my pronouns are he, him. somebody's like, oh, cool. And then I say my pronouns are they, them. They're a little more familiar with the idea of even introducing your pronouns. But then chances are they're going to be like, huh, what does that mean? And then I'm going to have to do a lot of emotional labor explaining it. So yes, you can ask questions of people and ask them what they need. But if there's like something you don't understand, or it's like, so how does it work? You know, that is what Google is for. There's a lot of writing and a lot of reading you can do. So don't put it on us to like educate you about the basics. Okay, I was going somewhere. Okay, so introduce your pronouns, and then practice gender-neutral language. Even today at Pride, multiple people on the stage said, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm just like, huh? I feel left out by that, you know? And there's a lot of other people who do as well. Or, you know, you can assume that you know somebody's gender. Oh, the barista, she's da-da-da-da, and they might be trans. They might use he pronouns. So you can practice just saying like, thank you, friend, thanks, folks, instead of ladies and gentlemen and sir and ma'am. And it'll start to work its way into the fabric of how we see gender, because it's all socially constructed anyway. But for us to change socially as a whole society towards not assuming the gender that we know that it's one of two genders, right? And we do it from babies on, from fetuses on, you know, it's a girl, it's a boy. And it just takes a lot of actually conscious effort of changing the way that you think about gender as a construct. So that is one huge thing you can do for trans people, and especially gender non-conforming, non-binary, meaning not part of the binary of male and female, is to practice gender-neutral language and not gender strangers.
So we can be allies to each other under this gigantic, enormous umbrella, because we're all, or many of us, or like I'm not all the letters under the umbrella. I'm a few of them. I have started using non-binary pronouns for myself. Not because I necessarily need to. I mean, there is an element in my story where that fits really well, but I never have. But the reason why I've done it is out of a sense of solidarity and trying to normalize it for my office. I'm an LGBT person, and it's very easy for me to ask everyone to call me them, they, their, because when are they going to get the practice? So I'm trying to do my part in normalizing that. So I consider that another part of allyship. So, again, any other more questions?
How do we explain to non-queer folk that just because it's 2018, discrimination still exists? What's the question?
Yeah.
Trump?
Well, I like to cite marriage equality. A lot of people think that because now we have marriage equality, the fight's over, when really, like, trans women of color are still being murdered. And you know, there's very specific instances every day in the news that you can see and cite. I don't know. It depends, like for me, whenever I'm approaching people, I always just kind of pull out of my brain whatever I read that morning in the news. Usually. Do any of you guys have any other?
You can still legally be fired in plenty of states in this country for being gay or trans or falling under any of the LGBTQ spectrum. There's a lot of legal issues depending on what state you live that really changes if you can be out in the workplace. We think there's no big deal now, right? We've got gay marriage, it's fine, we can all have gay weddings, but like also what about people who don't want gay weddings, folks who are poly, folks who would like to keep their job and they don't live in California?
Well, so I would add, and this is not an endorsement of the organization, but I'm running for city council in Monterey, and I get a lot of feedback from people about how should I form my messaging about my campaign, and a lot of people tell me be really careful about inserting your sexuality into your messaging, right? When I should be like I should be able to hold my partner in a photo and use that for my postcard and distribute that to the community and have people be excited and happy to see that I have a beautiful family that I love. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, even speaking to the cameras now makes me a little bit nervous about it. But I mean, again, I'm with people that I can be vulnerable with, and so it does still exist. It's unfortunate that that a lot of people fear that support me. They're supporting my campaign, right? The people that support me, they encourage me to avoid inserting my sexuality into my messaging, which is fundamental to who I am. It's a big part of what I do with my life. So it's just crazy. So it exists.
I think one of the fundamental mistakes that so many identity groups make, or social justice groups make, is to think that that it's all about gaining like some change in the law, or gaining ground. It is about gaining ground, but it is always about defending that ground. There is no such thing as settled law. There's no such thing. Everything won can be lost. Everything won can be lost. And there are people who are working towards reversing everything that we have got, and it can happen.
On that note, like, we carry our entire human history with us every day in society. Like, redlining was a thing way back when, and there's still communities that struggle with the aftermath of that. And
yeah, I think Trump was an easy thing that people threw out, but the truth is Pence is the scariest one as far as anti-gay stuff that have any large. He's still pushing for conversion therapy. The wedding cake thing, that just went to the Supreme Court, and okay, he won that thing. It's constant, and even under Obama, I think there was like 427 anti-LGBTQ things proposed. Most of them did not pass, but you've seen a big shift in the Supreme Court, and that's going to get more. So you're right. So many things can be taken away.
Could you describe the cake thing again, just in case people don't understand what that is? I think that's an important.
Well, okay, but film me. I mean, if I blow it, a gay couple. Thank you, Tyler.
I'm sorry.
Kick him for me. A gay couple, a lesbian couple, right, went in to order a cake for their wedding.
Yes.
The baker found out it was for a lesbian wedding and said, "No, I will not make it for
It's
you."
men.
Men. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. All right. They see. All right. We're all in this together.
A same-sex couple.
Yeah, same-sex couple. Thank you. And he did not make it, and they started going into the court system. And for a long time, you couldn't discriminate based on same-sex. And now the Supreme Court, and I don't. You could probably fill it in better than I can. So I don't know. You can.
No, I can't. You go first.
Well, that's the best I could do. Sorry.
Well, it's gone to the Supreme Court, and now they can't discriminate.
Yes, they sided with the baker.
Yes.
Well, I think the technicality is it was the process. It was the commission that was where they found the fault. So the issue is still in play. But because the fault was on the process that the Supreme Court found the fault with. Right.
And it's not about cakes. First off, it's about the segregation wasn't about water fountains. It's about the ability to discriminate on that basis, and you can carry that over, use that as precedent for any other, you name it, like whatever, like Starbucks or whatever.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of discrimination. So for me, working with teenagers, many of that coming generation is able to openly identify somewhere in the L to the Q to the plus acronym. And however, it's within the families, it's within the friend groups that they meet discrimination, which it just has a harmful personal, emotional toll on us. And like, I'm sure we've all kind of experienced it to some degree from family and from friends, but it can really put a damper on your spirits, which then can lead to things like worsening mental illness and high suicide rates, very high suicide rates of queer teens, queer and trans teens. because they're being told, no, this isn't who you are, and oh, this is a fad, and this is a trend, and it's not, you know, even if it's coming from a place of them wanting, the parents wanting to protect them from transphobia, it's like the transphobia is coming from the parents more than anybody else. And I don't know, that's just kind of my little 2 cents about how we face discrimination. But when people are actively discouraged from embracing who they are, that's discrimination in a big way too.
So we're at 6:15, and there's a big event happening in here, so we need to be out by 6:30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Father John, and we're going to go this way now, and we're just going to say whatever the last things that we have to say on our hearts.
Do you want to use the condom?
The heart condom.
Here you go, Father John.
Thank you. You know, when I was doing HIV/AIDS education many years ago, I would go into schools, and because I said the word condom, parents were, you know, calling the superintendent of schools and everything else. I used to work, and some of you may have known her, a lady by the name of Dr. Meg Watson Williams, an English doctor. And we'd be doing the same group and same environment, and she would say condom, and everybody would just melt because she said it with a British accent, and it was okay for her to say it, but if I said it, you know, the gay male said it, then, you know, it was trouble all the way around. I think we need to be aware that not to take things for granted these days. You know, we've talked about marriage equality as an example. You know, we have not finalized it. We've only suspended the discussion. It still says in the California Constitution that same-sex marriage is illegal. We've used the court rulings to make it legal, but we still have to get that verbiage off the Constitution. We can't rely always on a court decision to secure our rights, because who knows, a Supreme Court justice may retire, and the balance of the court will be thrown off again. And so we need to be vigilant and keep working the process and until that foundation is settled. So there you go.
Thank you. I think that I'm going to quote again Ijeoma Oluo, who I quoted in my speech. She tweeted, she's a writer, activist, Black queer woman, author of So You Want to Talk About Race. It's really good, so go read it, especially if you're white. And she tweeted, look for the places where your privilege intersects with someone else's oppression. That is the piece of the system you have the power to help destroy. And that is like my mantra. And I think that one thing to keep in mind is that maybe our own issues are not always the most pressing. And while people are being like, well, I don't know, I mean, ICE looks a hell of a lot like the Gestapo to me. And people are being rounded up, families are being separated, people are being detained and deported, and it's completely inhumane, and it's all legal, and it's all here in our country. And that to me is more pressing than a cake. And so maybe we can, you know, consider that we are all we've all got a human struggle to work for equity and peace. And let's look for the most urgent human rights crises before we just focus on working for our own needs. Yes, bless you all, and thank you.
I think the message that I think I'm trying to give off through my campaign, and also I think what we're trying to do within this organization, is to, the last line is actually Cultivating Alliances. And so if we're going to create these spaces where we're trying to get people involved, I mean, that's kind of our job on our side as organizers, as activists in the community, is to find ways to inspire people to get involved that tend not to be involved. But then also speaking to the audience, which I know some of you are active in the community, but for those that aren't, you know, use this as an opportunity to be inspired. Just do one little thing. Don't don't go overboard, which will probably end up happening. But just take that step forward. Be vulnerable. Allow that experience to happen and occur. And so if I could walk away today from this entire experience of Pride 2018, is to have inspired one person to just get involved and be active in the community. So that's kind of where my heart rests today.
I'm going to speak about our needs on the board. So, and just organizing in the community. We really want to be intersectional and multicultural. It matters to us. I mean, it's not a rainbow if it's not a rainbow. So it's got to be a rainbow. And so we are particularly in need here in this area of Latino, Latina, Latinx folks, and they're doing fabulous things other places, but we would like that in our little group as well. More trans folk is, I think, very needed, non-binary. And also, I want to mention that I think there can be a tendency, and I'm one of these people, but I think there can be a tendency for this to get very establishment. And there has been a lot of, so much of the history of LGBT activism has been very radical, and and I want to make sure, I want to encourage those voices to come and join us as well, because our intention is to, we're not trying to be in a place where we're all agreeing. We're just trying to be in a place where we're all of service to the LGBT community at large, and that includes a whole diversity, not just of sexual and gender identities and ethnicities. It also includes points of view. So I want to make sure that that we are welcome to all points of view as well.
I am still just continuing to think and feel about how humble and grateful and inspired I am by all of the emotional labor, physical, spiritual, emotionally, that has gone into this moment where the 7 of us are sitting here talking to a handful of community members and a live internet live stream camera about issues that matter and about things that matter in our world. Both historically, all of the labor that has gone into getting here, and today, and the people, and I don't want to forget that. I want to continue thanking everyone who has brought us to where we're at right now.
Boy, thank you. It's fact.
She's like, what is
I
this
want
thing?
to echo a little bit about what Jon said and what NCBI does a lot, and that is to have the conversations with one another. We get hung up on, oh God, did I get the pronoun right? Did I do that right? Did I say the wrong thing? And from whether you get the right couple and a cake thing, whatever, that you put yourself out there, that you're willing to listen to people's stories. I've been working a little bit with an anti-racism group, and one of the most wonderful things I love is when my mind is blown, when I think I know something and I don't, because I've just come from such a white bread, middle class, privileged thing, and when you see so much rich culture going on, the pain of it as well as the joy of it, and you open yourself up to your stories, Jerry, around the Chinese village, it builds your heart. It's like the Grinch. Your heart gets bigger, and your world gets bigger. You just feel like, okay, I'm much more of a global citizen, and that's what I'm here for. That's what we're here for, is to make those connections. So I know we've been doing some community conversations. We're going to continue that, and hopefully we'll continue with bringing more people who maybe don't look or sound like us, but we can find those common threads where we can talk. And so I'm very excited to be part of this group and all the other groups that want to come together and learn. Have fun.
2 things. I just want to elaborate on Quazar's point on our recruitment, which is that we're not trying to fill a quota. We're trying to bring representation onto our board, which will represent both the underserved LGBTQ community, also the underserved Latinx community, and the intersection that meets there. And that's really important because we can't serve them as well as we could without those voices at the table. The other thing is that I'm just so excited to see what we can accomplish in the community now that our Pride celebration's over. We can really focus on the nitty-gritty, tough, you know, not quite as party hard work, and more just like the conversations for one, and just creating a more inclusive Monterey Peninsula, specifically the peninsula. And thank you all for being here. This has been incredible.
Again, I want to thank Community Human Services. We want to thank Wave Street Studios for having us, and have a gay day. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm so glad I got to sit next to you.
Good job, my friend. We're gonna
I have work today. This was for free. I just want you to know we're all volunteers.
We just wanted to tell you that, you know, as some of you shared your the concerns, what